Oh, welcome. Um, the track you're hearing is actually Demetori. Deep Mountain, but I think because there's two names for it, there's this bit that's always confused me with this track. There's another song called Deep Mountain, and yeah, it's Toho. But there's one that's like metal, and there's this, which is like acoustic. And I really prefer the acoustic one, to be honest. Not that the metal one is bad, but the acoustic one is just... it brings you such joy. It's so fucking good. It's probably one of the best acoustic tracks I've ever fucking heard, full stop. And this is coming from someone who hasn't necessarily heard a lot of acoustic tracks. But I do know that this one just invokes a certain emotion. Like joy, euphoria. It's just insanely fucking good, given that Demetori is like a rock/metal artist. This track just gives almost such pop vibes, and it's just, yeah, it's just so bright and cheerful. There's so many things this track does, and it's always been heavy inspiration, and even then, even some of my own tracks, all my bridges I've attempted to sort of mimic this sort of sound. It's a bit hard because you need to balance it out quite well with metal as well. I think the first time I ever truly achieved something like this is probably the Dr. Wily's Castle cover I did, the remake rather. And it sounded the most like this track, I think. Could be wrong, but it certainly gave me a sort of similar response. And then the solo in this, just, it's incredible. You'll hear it later. It's also like this organ bridge thing going on for that. Yeah, the drums go quite hard as well. That's the thing about acoustic tracks. Not every acoustic track has drums and it just feels empty. And there's even like older Demetori tracks which are like this, I think, where it doesn't have drums. But this one, it adds so much. Yeah, it's such a good fucking track. Jesus Christ. It does almost bring me to tears though, because it's just that fucking good. Again, I've never heard a track like it. Yeah, it's so unique. It was hard to believe that it's actually real. It's that good. Anyway, I think I better move on to the first topic, but you know, if you haven't listened to Demetori, you should. Because it is a fucking journey. From start to finish, it is something. It's probably one of the best music you'll ever hear. Let's move on. What a start to the morning. What do I even start with? I don't think, because I've got two topics. I think I'll start with the one that came to mind yesterday. Last night, rather, actually. And it's actually a really fun one. I didn't realise how fun it would be to sort of explore the idea. But I was thinking, as I was looking at a Monkey BGM playlist, which is a jazz music channel, I listened to that to fall asleep essentially. One of the images was of a campervan on the beach, and I just thought, you know what, that looks really fucking nice. At the same time, I was thinking of Pokemon, just as a way to unwind, and you know, being in the Pokemon world itself is one of the things that helps. You know, just imagining myself there, because I really like the Pokemon world. You know, it's often a beautiful place, and you know, there isn't much conflict or strife, although there is certainly an existence of it, hence Team Rocket. It's not like other worlds where things are lawless and, you know, basically compared to Final Fantasy XIV here, it's like, yeah, I'd pick Pokemon any day. But I was thinking, seeing that on the beach, it had me thinking about what I would do in the Pokemon world. I think the most obvious thing is I'd be an evolution trainer, but I'd have multiple. Like, I'd have pretty much all of them, and that'd be such a cool idea anyway, because my idea was just being the evolution trainer and having all of them enjoying interactions, you know, like having pets essentially. Yeah, it'll be a lot of fun. But I realised seeing the camper van in that video, it just made me think, what if, yeah, you could probably see where this is going, but what if I had a camper van and travelled around the world with my evolutions? Perfect. Like, there's no fucking better combo there. Because not only do they get to see the world, they get to travel. They get to run around in all different areas. It's like ideal for them and ideal for me as well. Literally perfect. And we also just get to live on the road. Get to park anywhere we want and get the peace and silence that we need. It's just great. There's no better situation in that. It's almost to the point where living in a house in Pokemon could be a burden. But, you know. But then I was thinking about how you decorate the interior, and that even expanded my mind a bit. Because how would you make an interior where there's a safe, well, not necessarily safe, it's always going to be safe, but some spots for Pokemon to, you know, excuse that, that's my alarm, I got up early today, somehow, just cleaning my glasses, but how do I make it more accommodating to them? And the realisation I had was, I can make custom beds, so, you know, for each Pokemon it'll be different, there'll be different needs and stuff. So, I think one I was thinking of is like Flareon could have a very sort of fluffy bed somewhere. Like there could be even like a bunk bed system. Like, that's how creative this could be, because it's a camper van. Like anything can happen. And also like technically like a cat flap, so they can go to the toilet if they need to. Assuming they do that. That's never been questioned on Pokemon for some reason. I'm assuming there is, like, toilets and stuff, like, I'm pretty sure people go. But then Pokemon also have to go as well. So, yeah, like, sort of, I call it like an Eevee flap rather than cat flap. So that'll be that. So, Flareon fluffy beds. Jolteon I put near the mains or the electricity, with like a normal bed. So it's like that source of comfort, like you could play with the electricity part of the camper van. The Vaporeon, obviously like have to have a place next to either the sink or the bathroom. Yeah, somewhere that's comfortable and obviously has vapor. I'll be honest, Espeon would be the tougher ones to pick for, I think, because you'd have to consider the, what is it, I'm trying to think, get distracted by the music keeps autoplaying. Espeon, Umbreon, see Umbreon probably better in the darkness, so like a more enclosed area. And Espeon would be like near a window, I suppose, so maybe that way? We've had also normal beds that have. Then what else? I'm trying to think. There'd be Glaceon and Leafeon, that would be interesting, so yeah, like, I think Glaceon would be the hardest to address because it's not easy to find a sort of cool spot. I suppose like near the intake fan maybe, like it's cooler. Intake of the saber, I mean outtake, the fan that blows out there. So somewhere like that. Leafeon, surprisingly near a window as well, I think. Because of photosynthesis, that's how Leafeon sees. Don't know how many people know that actually. Apparently that's how Leafeon eats. It just absorbs the sun for energy. So that'd be a good place, I think. Then what else? Finally we got Sylveon. I'll address Eevee after, but Sylveon, I think Sylveon would be fine on the bed, honestly, sharing my bed. And the same with Eevee, let's be honest. And yeah, I think that'd be great. But again, this is like where my imagination goes. I literally consider the aspect of living in this world and accommodating each Pokemon's experience towards it, so that they're living comfortably, but I'm also enjoying myself too. Yeah, it's honestly really good. And I think I might have some additional Pokemon. I won't mind some Vulpix. I'm not sure who else I'd have. Probably need a flying Pokemon just to be safe with regards to like flying and stuff. Never know, you might need a flying Pokemon. That does feel like a somewhat necessary part of the team to have. Not sure who I'd pick though, that's the interesting thing. Maybe Dragonite. I always found Dragonite kind of cute, and that means almost have every type of Pokemon. And just missing Ground and Rock, and Ghost, actually. Yeah. Oh, and Steel. But yeah, I'll probably have like another few Pokemon as well, like Aegislash, Ghost Steel. I always loved Aegislash. I think probably one of my favourite Pokemon in terms of abilities. And then Ground and Rock. I would probably Golurk for like Rock and Ghost. I think Golurk anyway, isn't Golurk Rock and Ghost? Okay, thanks Google for being just Ground and Ghost, okay. Not sure about Rock though. How do you look up Rock type Pokemon? Type Pokemon. Let's see. We don't want another Dragon type or Ghost, so. Then again, Rhydon is kind of cool. Rhyhorn. Trying to think. I don't know who that would be. Maybe Carbink. Carbink's kind of goofy. And then again, this is Google search, so it could be wrong. Oh, Lunatone. Having Lunatone as a Solrock could be great for evolutions, I think. Yeah, so I was thinking along the lines of, isn't he, there you go, a fucking rock type? Hang on. Why is that here? Oh, it is. Didn't realise that. I was a bit confused for a second. Why is an Ultra Beast a rock type? Didn't realise. Yeah, like that's Pokemon, essentially. Yeah, there's a lot that I just love about the world, and it's a shame that it's just completely botched by the Pokemon company. I was looking at a animation, sorry for the dystopia, but literally it is dystopia. But I was looking at a short comparing the animations, and yeah, like compared, like Omega Ruby compared to a 3D modern game, like 11 years later. Is that Omega Ruby? I think it's Alpha Sapphire actually. But they compared that to a modern version of the encounter with Kyogre. I just forgot his name for a second. I should have just got scammed in Final Fantasy. Bought these things thinking I'd sell them for a lot. Nope, is that not really? But yeah, like the comparison, it's like night and day. Kyogre looks like really good in the older game, rather than the newer. The newer actually looks embarrassing. The way it just sort of awkwardly flies over the entrance, the camera angles, the shites. It is an atrocity. Just hands down bad. And that's the issue here. Yeah, this is why people are essentially having a cry for help in terms of Pokemon. But they want to see it do well and do better, but it's not doing that because Pokemon companies decided, you know what, we're greedy, we're doing this. It's like, great, thanks Pokemon Co. Just fucking great. Anyway, I'm gonna move on. I've got one more topic to talk about, and that's it, I think. No, I haven't talked about this in a while, but it's because I mainly talked about it on DeviantArt before I obviously deleted that. But Hell of a Boss. What a fucking weird show. And it's not weird in a good way, in my opinion it's weird in a bad way. And I'll explain. I watched it in the first season and immediately thought, you know what, this isn't great. It's just a bunch of demons swearing, hot furry, not really much going on. Like, it had a sense of humour, which I liked, and it also wasn't afraid to go the extra mile. Obviously it's like a Cartoon Network for adults, as I've seen it phrased, and I sort of agree with. You know, it has that same sort of vibe with the art style, the animation, and it's really well animated, it has to be said. I'm genuinely curious how the fuck you can animate something like that, because it must take a lot of work. But then it's sort of let down by the various dialogue and even just the story. And the characters are fine, but this does contribute to the problem of, you know, the characters just being a bit sort of, I forgot the term, but annoying. Not about a term like that. But yeah, characters just tended to get on my nerves in that sense. And it just made me wonder, like, what the hell could be improved. And then season 2 came out, and that suddenly made me realise, oh, you know, there's actually a story here, and it's actually expanding, and it's actually decent. And I far more enjoyed season 2 than I did season 1. But I wish that this show would be more than that sometimes. It certainly has some funny moments again in season 2, but it feels like it could do a lot more. I don't know if that's unrealistic, but to me, for a show that's like not necessarily progressive, but because it, you know, just references obviously progressive stuff, but for a show like that, it does have a lot more potential in my opinion. And I just wish that it would be better than that. So yeah, it's a bit weird to me. I'm not really sure what else to add here, but yeah, Hell of a Boss still has a long way to go in my opinion. Even with the recent episodes where, well, spoiler obviously, Stolas was essentially made homeless because Stella, I think, kicked him out, was it? Something like that? Or his dethroned or something like that. And he has to live with, well, his sort of boyfriend slash fuck buddy. What's he called? Blitzo, that's it. Blitzo. Yeah, that's just awkward. He realises that this isn't a life for him, which is interesting. But there's been some shorts of the series as well, which I've found somewhat entertaining here and there. I think one of the funniest jokes that still gets me is probably like, oh, like bigoted father, they're trying to kill this anime watching woman, I think, and there's this father that's just saying, like, you watching that hentai again? Fucking, it's genius. There's some great moments like that. There's also some really unexpected moments. I actually remember like, that one where Luna bonded with that guy, I think it was, and the guy ended up getting shot. Just crazy. I even remember like a scene briefly where someone was hiding behind a statue. It must have been Blitzo, it couldn't be anyone else. He's talking. Yeah, there's some interesting moments in this series. That's probably why I still watch it, to be honest, because the story aspect is a bit secondary in that sense, but the sense of humour is funny. And like, yeah, there's just some moments in that just make you scratch your head as well. But I will say one of the things that took me off guard about this, and this is apparently quite common. Apparently, children watch it, which is just okay. Like, it's extremely fucking strange. Like, obviously, parents should be keeping track of this, but then again, you can't stop them from everything. And in terms of like how it portrays itself, like, I consider something child friendly when it's not like an existential crisis or it's not sexual. Like, that's essentially the two criteria. Post-apocalyptic, believe it or not, children can be fine with. And it's hardly an existential crisis because it's very unlikely to happen. In fact, when I went to a special needs school, it was like a school activity thing. It's like something we did once in my school, which is great. You know, one of the kids I met there, I love the story because it really shows how these people are still human. They still have, obviously, intelligence. Like, they're still intelligent people. And one of the kids I met there was into zombies. He knew about the Fidelity. He played like, I guess, my shopping list. He knew about Walking Dead, I think, as well. Like, he was into the zombie stuff, literally, and that was fucking cool. And I think he was like diagnosed with a type of autism and learning difficulties, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe a physical issue as well, which does hinder things, but yeah. Like, I met this kid there. He's only about like 13 or 14, I think. Maybe a little younger actually. I don't know how old they go to in that school. It's been a while since I've been there. It's quite close to my other school there, so it might have been quite a young age, but still. You know, I don't consider these things adult themes. Like, yes, it's quite existentially crisistic. That's not even a word, but I'll take it. It does invoke that sort of feeling if you really think about it. But at the same time, it's not really that scary given how many children's shows actually reference it. And even with something like Heaven, Hell and Demons, well, most children probably know what that is and probably grew up with it anyway. And yeah, like, there often aren't really many things that children don't know. You know, the worst thing I saw as a child, which I didn't understand until I was much older, even after being explained what it was probably like the sex toy weapons in Saints Row and GTA. Because I played GTA San Andreas when I was like, I think 10 or 11, and you know, I was curious what this fucking like stick thing was. I asked about it. I don't think I really explained it to me, but yeah. But even then, that's not really a problem. You know, I think nowadays it was maybe a bit more of a risk. There's a bit more of a problem with like looking that up, sort of thing. And that does unfortunately yield results, but also half, like, in another way, it's so fortunate as well. It's weird, there's a strange balance with that, because one of the things that you didn't really get when I was around in school anyways, you didn't get access to these sort of shops where you can obviously buy that stuff, and you know, being explorative with your own body is fine. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, even if it is a child. It's just, if people obviously been really fucking creepy about that, and family do this because there are creeps in the family, by the way. It just goes wrong. But just self-exploration is not a bad thing at all. So yeah, like, really enough, it's turned into a discussion about that, but rather than Head of Evolves, but I think it's important to discuss just the topic of what is and isn't suitable for children. I think one of the other things, I suppose, is like seeing not suitable for life content, which is obviously people dying and all that sort of stuff. Animals dying is a bit different, but I'd argue that this should be for educational purposes, so like teaching people about what happens in agriculture. And believe it or not, most adults can't even watch it, but some children actually do watch it. So really, that shows how fucking. I'm not gonna go into it. You know, that's it. That really. I do really think that it's a hard line to draw, but in the end, I think it comes down to what the children know. It's not really our place to say what they can and can't watch, especially when they can just bypass it. And that's the thing that they can all do. It doesn't even take a minute to set up an email to fake your age. And it doesn't even take 10 minutes to even fake your own ID. It is all possible. And, you know, that's the problem. I think instead of protecting children for this shit, and this is the point with like surveillance and censorship, it just doesn't make sense. We should be educating them instead. It's as simple as that. So when they're going around watching Hell of a Boss, or even like Squid Game, for example, was one of the recent examples actually. You know, you teach them like what's wrong with all this. Like the problem with Squid Game, you like ask them like, what do you think this show means? What do you think all this is about? Like you quiz them and then you try to tell them what it is actually about if they get it wrong, or you explain why it's wrong to do this sort of thing. And that's more important than obviously the censorship we see online and just the surveillance. You know, a lot of parents don't seem to be doing that, which sucks. And that's why you even start to see really horrific things in schools now. Like back then, the biggest problem we had was probably worrying who the next paedophile teacher was. And nowadays, it's actually like, okay, which student's going to rape who, and which one's going to bully who to death. Like, literally to death. It's not a figure of speech, it is literally to the fucking death. But even like beating each other up, like, that's the other thing. Yeah, like, there's so many more problems now because of just the passing of information, and in the end, all you need is a strong will and to be able to be a better person, to be smarter as well. Those are the three things every child needs to survive now. So it's nothing to do with what they're watching or how they watch it, it doesn't really matter. It's about education. It's all it comes down to, education and parenting. Anyway, I better move on because I've really got stuff to do again. Yeah, hopefully people can actually take this advice on board because it is pretty useful. So one of the things I got thinking about recently again is from watching a Yorkscott's video and literally realising that people still struggle with parasocial relationships, and what I find interesting about this is the fact that people just don't know how to cope with it whilst being chronically online like I am. And you know, Wholesome changes a lot of different scenarios here, which is unfortunate. Because Wholesome does impact it quite a bit, to be fair. And it's quite frustrating at times because of how it just makes me behave and act in a way that I don't even prescribe to. You know, if it's a meltdown, I'll get angry and frustrated with things and people. But if it's like shutdown, I'll start to get extremely depressed. So it's like things get out of hand. And yeah, like there's not much to say on that, to be honest. But what I will add is when it comes to being chronically online, how do you start to disassociate from seeing so many personalities online and not start to feel like you're in a sort of, not relationship, but friendship together? It's not really that difficult. You know, in the end, it just takes touching grass. Like, it sounds like a joke, but actually that is what you do. And remember that these people are online, and they're not, well, they are real people, but they're not in front of you. They're not people you speak to every day as if they're in front of you. So that's already the most important thing to get out of the way first, is how it works. So that is a premise that you need to accept, obviously, right away, so it just doesn't get out of hand. And I think that's one of the most important parts as of this point. And I think it gets harder with how much you consume content from someone. So for example, I've got the Oxcast, and there was a point where I was like really pissed off with them for something, and really justifiable in a way, but not in others. I think it's interesting because there was a time where I just had a complete fucking breakdown over the people from the Oxcast, and in the end it just came down to just being a decent person in the end, and just admitting I'm wrong, just giving up on what I was believing, essentially, in terms of the conversation that's happening. So there's like interesting points there that needs to be taken into account. So what I did was I distanced myself. That's one of the best things you can do, I think, in my opinion anyway. Distancing yourself from people or a group is one of the easiest ways to address it. And it might seem difficult, but that's how you do it. Especially if it's someone you're attracted to, that's again how you do it. And I think it can sort of that weird age-old advice, like if you love something, you have to be willing to let it go, and that's the case here. I do love the Oxcast, they're a great gaming family, and I've enjoyed a lot of their content. They're inspiring as well, and that certainly adds to that element of I really like these guys. You know, they're almost like not family but friends. So they do have an impact there. So yeah, I'm not sure what to add, but you know, that's part of it, and it's important. I think the other thing is like being chronically online obviously has its own issues, because it can get you down, seeing all this stuff, all these things rather. You know, even being on Reddit, which to be honest you have to be pretty hardcore to be on, not for the reason that you think. It's not to just be like someone on Reddit, because there's a lot of stigma around being a Redditor, but I only use it for sharing and commenting and just having fun. I don't use it for the reasons that people associate it with, and that's important. I used to be, believe it or not. Yeah, I was one of those people who just go into chat forums, preach my vegan message, which, you know, I still agree with and still follow to this day. I'll still bring it up if I have to, but I'll do it in a different way. So it's like a non-toxic way, or at least I try to. So that's important. I think that really adds an element there that it makes you human. And I think that's the most important thing, it's just like being human in the end. That's what differentiates me from someone who is obviously like chronically online or just parasocial. And that's what all it takes. It takes applying empathy, being human, understanding the situations people are going through. And that's what's important here. So yeah, I don't really know what to add here, but you know, to me that's like the big thing. That's what it takes in the end. I could have probably missed something. I'm trying to think. Is there anything else? I don't really know. But to be honest, it seems like most of what needs to happen and what should happen. I don't know. So for some reason it seemed like my thing has gone down my timer for my music. It's weird. But yeah, that's the other thing. If you're chronically online, you need to fucking break the habits and stuff. So I watch streams a lot, and you know, depending on the person, I really jump streams, and depending on the game too, or the content, it varies. But having a way to split it up and everything you do online is really important. So I have multiple hobbies. I'm able to play like Final Fantasy XIV for hours and hours. I break it up by playing different games and having different hobbies as well. This is important to see, just being a pace breaker and just helping yourself. Just getting over, the boringness or nothingness of a certain game or content. And it applies to even streamers as well. So people you might develop a parasocial relationship with. And it's important to, this is the other thing, don't imagine yourself being there in front of them in their situations. You know, I haven't already mentioned that. I'm sorry about the garbage collectors. They're making a lot of garbage noise. So that's also an important aspect. And I think if you're sexualizing someone, I do think that requires like a type of therapy, because that is a problem. Don't be ashamed to admit it either, because a lot of people have probably done that. And there was a time when I probably did that as well. Can't remember if I did, but I'll just say I did anyway, just for this case. And yeah, like even then, with like a long distance relationship, which I definitely had at one point, it's like I was sexualizing my girlfriend, and it's like, oh, she's wonderful, but I was like over sexualizing her, not in the ways you think, but you know. So like, I constantly wanted to see her naked, I constantly wanted something from her, which is, to be honest, bad. You know, it should be an equal footing, essentially, that we give each other something, and that should be that. So that was like one of my biggest mistakes in that relationship. So yeah, I better move on, because I'm going to shit myself, I think. Yeah, that's this topic really. It's not comfortable, but it certainly is important. There are sometimes those episodes in South Park where you just feel like the message or the meaning was like good, and I was thinking of an earlier episode, one that's really fucking early. It's back when Mephisto was actually a character. I think it was season 2, might have been season 4 at a stretch. But we're of course talking about an episode which is about Napa. Yes, it's going to be controversial. I think it's important to note that the message in that was really ineffective and stupid. And I'll explain. It's really important to understand that these arguments cannot be solved with pointing out the issue. In fact, the argument is that stupid. Because it's literally, at the end of the episode, Stan literally says, "You fuck kids." And what does that say to them exactly? Well, I'm just wondering what the point of that was. It's not even proving anything. So, it's just an ineffective argument. The fact you're pointing something out and then trying to make it out as if it's a bad thing. But you don't think they already know that? Is that the argument? It's kind of like, what? So yeah, like, that doesn't make sense. And then, one of the things I realise in society now is arguments seem to go along that sort of line of reasoning as well. Like they point out the obvious, like calling something woke, for example. Like, yeah, of course it's fucking woke. Because people realise something you don't. And that's why it's there. Like, it's just stating the obvious. And I don't understand why people think this is a line of argument that would work to convince someone otherwise. And it even has to be said for the people who obviously still trying to justify these things, be it good or bad, it's still an ineffective argument. I think we need to start making a point about arguing in a way that obviously hits at the core and obviously benefits everyone in the situation. So when I think about the Ambler episode, for example, I talk about how it's wrong to fuck children because essentially they're young, they don't understand this yet, and they're most vulnerable at that age as well. And that if you were in that situation yourself, you would fucking hate it. It'd be terrifying. And I don't know because I've been through it, but that's another story. But yeah, literally, that's the way to make an effective argument. It's simple and to the point, and it uses empathy. That's more important. And the other thing, I suppose, you could argue here is the actions don't outweigh the, well, it's not really nice to say, but pleasure, assuming there is any. I don't really know. But that's another sort of argument you could probably say. You know, it's like, one of the things you have to realise is post-nut clarity is a fucking powerful thing, and I think if you're ever struggling with those urges, literally get the fuck off it, like, rub one out. You don't need to use someone for that. Just rub one out where you are. It's easy. And you've addressed the problem. So yeah, I think literally that is the way to go about arguing that. And similarly, I think you need to also ask a question about if people are not convinced by the arguments you've used, is to ask them what the goalpost is. And the goalpost, as I've used anyway in like effective arguments for quite a few years now, you set these things up so that people can score them. And depending on how easy or hard it is to argue, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But it's more important that you have an idea of what you know can convince you, or also get someone else to get you to convince them into something else. Because if they're not willing to do that, I think it's already a lost argument. If you're not willing to be proven wrong or put a goalpost on something, then yeah, there's obviously a fucking problem. You know, you can challenge me, for example, with ethics and what I think about the death penalty, for example, because this is a controversial one. But for me, the goalpost for the death penalty is, in a sense, trying to prove that it's effective in stopping criminals, stopping immoral actions. And that's literally the only, I think anyway, like criteria. You know, you just need to prove that it is in fact effective in a country where it hasn't always existed. And that's important. So you can literally prove me wrong on that. And I'm willing to be proven wrong because it doesn't really matter that much to me as a topic, but if it does anyway, it should be argued properly. It should be argued effectively. And again, that's far more important than just the, oh, you agree with the death penalty, you don't agree with it, whatever. You're a fucking monster. What does that tell me? It doesn't tell me anything. It's just a useless argument. No substance, no meaning, nothing. Yeah, not sure what else to add to this, but I just want to share this again, sort of argument tactic that, as far as I know, it does work. I could be wrong about that, but in most arguments I've had on the internet debates, like arguments are not exactly like a high voice banter. It's sometimes in text, obviously. It's mainly why I do it. It's also just a form of debate, and that's why it needs to be had and why it needs to be done effectively and properly. So yeah, I don't really know what else to add here, but you know, that's the gist of it. Hopefully people take it on board, because honestly I think it's pretty useful. It's helpful for getting rid of bias, and it's helpful for challenging beliefs and even being challenged for that matter. It's not even a hard thing to wrap your head around. Like, I think anyone can understand this. You know, a goalpost is a goalpost. Nothing more, nothing less. So that's why I think it needs to be taken seriously and honestly as well. So yeah, I think I'll move on now in a sec when I can get to it. Yeah, so it's our topic, let's move on. So one of the things with being lonely is I don't know, it's not hard to cope, but it is difficult to sometimes form opinions or even just be correct about certain things. And one of the things I've realised with my loneliness is I just don't want to turn out to be an asshole. And this is like the biggest motivation for me to being correct and being a decent person, and it has paid off, essentially. I say that because I want other people to have hope in that sense. Because there's a lot of stigma against people who, again, are not very socially communicative or just apt in that sense. Sorry about that. And that's the thing, people associate it with bigotry and, you know, everything that's sort of discriminative or derogatory. And it's not like that if you do it right. I say this as someone who's been through all the fucking emotions and just bullshit in general. And I'll try to explain how. So, this is about your headspace and how you actually address it. I think it's really important to address because, in a sense, this is one of the biggest ways you can counteract any issues you come up with. And I think that's why this is so important. So, obviously, when you're thinking, you tend to be overthinking. If not, you're doing something. But that's kind of the gist of it. You get stuck in your own headspace and you start thinking a lot to yourself, and that's what you do. Actually, that's another thing I need to add to that, because I only realised it recently. Okay, but you can really get trapped and hooked on ideas that they're not exactly desirable or even just rational. And that's where you need to stop changing the way you think, or even just doing something different entirely, without obviously making yourself uncomfortable. And one of my pieces of advice for that, I've got multiple here, and it's how to not become an armchair idiot, as I called it, because that's what a lot of people end up doing in this situation. So I'll list the ways to mitigate this. Firstly, when you come up with an opinion or an idea, you want to back it up with research. And I've done this with quite a few things. I mean, I don't do it as much because, well, I'm not in a good state at the moment with burnout and the world currently. But I still try to look it up, and it does yield results sometimes. It's not always the way, but it does work when it does. It just does things really, like, there isn't much to say on it. It can work, and that's pretty important, I think. So, yeah, being able to back it up is extremely important. When you form an opinion, you literally don't want it to be like, oh, this is the most convenient opinion for me. Obviously, you don't say that, but you keep it secret. And the best way to refute that, or just not even be biased, is just to look it up. You get the truth, you get, what's the name? Closure, that's it. And that's really important. That's actually how you address this crap. So it doesn't become a dangerous opinion. You don't become like a, you know, like one of those right-wing podcasters who, let's be honest, to be like, they're probably actually just been in those situations all the time. They don't get challenged, they don't get anything. Yeah, it's like a joke, really. So what else do I add? Yeah, the next thing would be to reflect off of other people. This is sort of similar to research, but you're forming an opinion, and this is important because to form an opinion, you also need to be right about things, but you need to have challenges as well. You need to be challenged with it, because if you're not doing that, you're not doing it right, and that's because it ends up leading you to dangerous opinions and even incorrect ones for that matter. So it's not often that optimal to do that. So you need to reflect it off of other people so that you can be sure that what you're doing is right, what you're saying is right. And I've done this, and I've even been so challenged about it before, and I've been wrong. It happens. There's no shame in that. I think to have an overactive imagination, you do have a sort of gift there. It's one of the things I realised, and you shouldn't be ashamed for it, to be honest, because it's obviously a good thing. Not enough people actually do thinking in their head. I don't know how people don't realise this, but that's because they don't think. Like, it's so fucking obvious. Like, come on. It's like, Jesus Christ, people. But that's also another thing. And the next thing is the passage of the least harm possible. And this even works for non-FX-centric topics like technology. Yeah, like, I think the way I see it is when you start to think about things, you start to try to take the most convenient routes, but this isn't always the best thing. I've come across these scenarios before. Like, I use like a moral example and a software example. So let's go with like morals. The important thing when it comes to that is just not prescribe to harm. This is important because when you prescribe to harm, you do endanger people and you endanger life. And prescribing to any sort of harm requires a really good justification. I kind of like the term. I wonder if I can remember. I can't remember the exact words. It's like extreme harm requires extreme justification, but it's sort of along those lines. It's not exactly, but that's the gist of it, and that's important. And that's only how to get it to work. So that's why that's a thing. And that's why that's important. But that's essentially how you get away from the apathetic response. And it's important to do that because currently, again, there's a lot of apathy in the world. And we just don't need that. So it's that's why there isn't much to say on that. So, what's the next thing? The software example. So, yeah, it's a bit niche, but it's important as well. Like, it's similarly important. But when it comes to even picking out software or shopping or whatever, you don't want it to be super convenient for you or expensive. And again, I'm doing the least amount of harm possible with this. Like, your choices, your lifestyle choices, that matter, is important. That's how you stop being an arsehole, essentially, and you start being someone who is rational, informed, and sensible. And the part of that I realised years ago is like being a decent person isn't hard in terms of lifestyle because it's actually possible. And that's why I would argue that it is possible to be decent in that scenario. I became vegan back in 2016, admittedly, and I was a bit out and about then. But that came about because of thoughts I had about it, and what I'd witnessed from Gary Yoffsky's speech. I mean, he's a bit cancelled now, so it's not really worth talking about him. But it still inspired me to be vegan, which in itself was impressive. Eventually I stopped for holiness reasons. It's a bit stupid. And that's sort of why this thought stuff comes in. It's important. And yeah, eventually I became a better person over time, really. And yeah. But that's one of the examples. But I eventually became vegan again. Later on I started to challenge myself on it, like, am I actually right in thinking all the harm has been done to animals? And I was like, yeah. I said I wasn't right. Because that could easily be a challenge. Someone could literally turn around and say, no, that's wrong, because if you pay for it, that's creating supply and demand. That's like the biggest argument against that. And then you've got all the ethical reasons, all the health reasons, again, backing up with research. This all exists in research. You can't find it, even the ethical stuff, by the way. And that's how you get to that. That's why it's important. So, clicking's getting stupid sometimes. Yeah, so the researcher. Trying to think. What's the other thing with software? Well, whatever. But yeah, making the right lifestyle choices. Like, I don't want to support corporations, for example, so, I don't go the route of looking for the next corporation to quote-unquote support. Instead, I go about trying to avoid that. And that's really important because corporations fucking suck, as you may know. So I don't want anything to do with them. So I avoid every avenue I can with that. And that's really important. Because I don't think if you're not doing that, you're not helping anyone. You're making situations worse for others. And it's just not going to have any good karma for you, even though I don't believe in karma. I do think things sometimes come back around. They come back around to bite you with the consequence. And the good things you do have good outcomes as well. So it's like you win either way for doing the right thing. And what else? Trying to think. Devil's enemy. Yeah, that's like the sort of most ethical route sort of thing in terms of decision making and general stuff. I'll say stuff, it's not very professional, but who cares what's professional? And that's the thing, just be yourself as well. You don't have to conform to anyone just because you're not normal. You can to obviously try to fit in, and that's sometimes the best way to go about things, unfortunately. And you don't have to. Not in your own space anyway. It's not their place to judge you. And that's why that's important. And so, yeah. Next thing I might as well move on to is I'll talk about software. Yeah, doing more small incorporation there, that's it. So the next thing is repair wrongs and mistakes that you make along the way and drill it in. This is one of the most common things I see, I think. Is that people make a judgment based on what they've thought about in their own headspace, and it can end up being incorrect. And it just doesn't work. So the way to address it, obviously, is you repair them. You can't always repair mistakes you've made if it's physical, but you can try to make better on your part in the future, or moving onwards rather. And this is something I do pretty much on a not daily basis, because I'm not always making mistakes, but I still try to do whenever it comes up. I try to do right by people and by anyone involved. It depends on what it is. That's arguably important to me. So that's why I care about that. What's the other thing? Yeah, like drilling it in. you have to do that, because if you don't, you're just doing the same shit over and over again. It's not helping anyone. It's harming people, in fact. That's like probably a stretch, admittedly, but it's still harming people regardless. And then the final thing, which I only just realised today, but I had talked about it yesterday actually with my housemate. I was being asked like, how do I cope in this hellhole of a house? I do so by keeping busy. I don't restrict myself. I don't say like, oh, I'm not going to do anything today. I'm just going to stay in my chair, which for some reason he does, and just fuck around. I just do things here. I have hobbies. I have interests, and that's how you avoid also the bad headspace stuff. When you devoid yourself of joy, literally, I think you become devoid of joy. That's how it works. It sucks, but that is how it seems to work. That's important to address as well. So yeah, like keeping busy is like the biggest thing, I think. And I think a lot of people who just get bored end up facing these consequences where they get paranoid or they get really unhealthy about certain things. And admittedly, like, you don't have to keep busy with difficult tasks. I do this by having hobbies that I enjoy. And having the hobbies you enjoy also gives you space to distance it out and even break routine. And that's important because it can fucking out of that fucking rabbit hole. That's why it's so helpful, usually. But yeah, like, I don't really know what else to add there. That's what I'm thinking of. So I think it's important. Try not to die here in front of fancy, fucking hell. Yeah, better move on because I've got stuff to do. Yeah, that's like the gist of it. I could be wrong, challenge me if you want to. That's what I'm thinking. So, yeah, that's the topic. So this is pretty wild, not gonna lie. It turns out the developers of HYPERSKY have mostly been laid off. It doesn't surprise me, to be honest, and you should watch my Critical's video on this. It's a bit more in depth, but I have some thoughts about it as well. I think if you're seeing a game that's likely to be a failure, I think it's time to look for a new job. Hopefully the developers did. But when I see something like this, I often think, how? Like, how do you think this is going to work out? Like, seriously. Because I think you do need hindsight in this, if that's the correct term, is it? I might be mistaken for something else, so correct me if I'm wrong. But it's just a shitty situation. And it sucks for the developers, it sucks for the players as well. Let's just be honest about that. And it wasn't a game that I had very high impressions about anyway from the get-go. It just didn't seem like it'd have much going on, and I was right. You know, there was nothing in the trailer. There's nothing happening in it at all. But it's just a generic hero shooter with mounts and stupidly big maps which didn't need to be that big. It's like, you got the worst of both worlds there. And I say the worst because we're already oversaturated with hero shooters. And then, in a bizarre turn of fate, I only found out today as well that they're making a Horizon live service. Horizon franchise? Like, how fucking dare you? You fucking bastards. What are you doing? Because I actually like the Horizon franchise. It's good enough in fact that after playing the games I was like, is there any books? And I looked at it and there was. And there's a few on my list of books to read at some point. Maybe just far into the future, which maybe when it happens actually. That'd be funny. Not really. But the fact they're making a live service for this just makes it so bizarre. why? Why are you making this? It doesn't make any fucking sense. It's like if you make a God of War like hero shooter or something like that. Like if it picks a hero shooter for some reason I noticed, and it's because of the successes suck. Yes I do. But the successes of like Marvel Rivals and Overwatch and Valorant, all of which are hero shooters, and they think because that did well, that must mean, oh, yeah, it's actually good. It's actually a good genre to get money from. But that's not how it works. It's not how the world works at all. You fucking idiots. So like all these investors, and this is the thing, like, people are so stupid, even in just like investments, that they think this sort of thing would take off, but it's not how it works at all. It's definitely not how it works. And in my experience of being around the gaming industry and live services so long, the ones that survive have to do it first, and they have to do it well. Because you can't have one or the other. Technically speaking, we've always had live service shooters. It's just that investors didn't really take note of it. TF2 was the earliest example, and then you got technically Counter-Strike Source, if anyone remembers that. I somehow do, even though I didn't play it at the time. And yeah, they think suddenly they're onto something because they are making a live service shooter. It's like, it's not how it works, you idiots. There's more to it than that. It has to be fun. You have to have the gun gameplay, you have to have the story aspect. As you know, that was a big thing, and the character aspect too. You know, you want characters that resonate with players, not necessarily all the time, but ones that you can enjoy and have most memorable. TF2, for example, has the most memorable fucking characters in gaming, period. You don't know why? Because any time you reference it, anywhere on the internet, you'll probably get someone who knows it. Yeah, Sun Tzu said that. Probably. You know, you can say anything about TF2, and people know what it is. You know, Putus, or Penis, or Nope. Like, there's so many references. That's what makes it memorable. And that's what I feel is also lacking in just these live services and shooters in general. Whenever I look at a shooter, I'm not looking for the most grindable fucking piece of shit that's out there, because it is a piece of shit. I'm actually looking for the most memorable one. And that's what Overwatch was. It was memorable, it's fun. You had the skins, you had the stupid competitive, not competitiveness, but you know, the competitiveness with like heroes, not the players themselves. You know, you can have an all Torbjorn team, you can have so many different things in that. And it just made it so unique. And that's always the thing that I remember from Overwatch, even these years later after not playing it for quite a while now since Overwatch 2. That's always what feels like it's lacking as well. It also had ragdolls as well, I'm pretty sure. Maybe just some sort of ragdoll anyway. Probably not the most high-tech one compared to TF2 anyway. But that's what's so memorable. And then I look at Marvel Rivals, and I had considered playing that at one point, but I don't even remember or even know necessarily what the heroes are. But it's just not really a thing that interests me, to be honest. It would have interested me maybe years ago, but not really. I never grew up with superheroes, at least liking them anyway. So I never used to like them. And the thing only then, the only ones I sort of grew to like were probably when my siblings were watching it, like the old Spider-Man cartoons, which are actually really good. Also, Batman I ended up liking as well. And that's about it. Everyone else just bored me to death. None of the others really took my interest, and sometimes I just feel like cringe at times. You know, unless you got like a series like Marvel's The Punisher, that fucking amazing actor and the acting in that, and just how brutal that was, it's not really going to interest me. There's just nothing there, there's no substance, there's nothing. So, it doesn't interest me. That's what it takes these days. Admittedly, you shouldn't be picky about these things, not all the time anyway. But sometimes you have to. And that's what happens here. You know, people realise, oh, it's another live service hero shooter, it's the same art style as every other one, has the same sort of ideas as every other one. Might as well be another hero shooter. That's just shit. Like, go back to the podcast episode where I talked about how to make my own game, and basically have it be an arena shooter, but not as an emphasis on multiplayer, but rather single player and character customization. Just player experience customization as well. That's like the big sticking point for that. And that's arguably a much better game than anything else out there at the moment. That's saying something, given some games that have come out actually pretty decent. And I would argue it's really important that we get different types of games and memorable ones at that. You know, in my game, for example, the idea that I had, not my game specifically, I don't have a game, you can customise it to how you want. So your weapons are to your liking, your environments are also to your liking, and you can even name your character, obviously. It's like an RPG with an arena shooter, and that's the gist of it. But think of it this way as well, because this is the additional thing that makes it even better. Because being able to customise your environment doesn't just mean picking like whatever environment you want. It means drawing the fucking assets for it, making the assets, uploading the assets. You can do whatever you fucking want, and there's nobody there to tell you can't do that. You know, if for some reason you want all the, I don't know, the wall text just to be like feet pictures, feel free. It's not me to criticise what you should do with that. You know, that's for you to do. That's what the customisation's there for. It's there for the goofiness and the fun. It's not there to tell you what you can and can't do. That's sort of the magic of at least what TF2 and Overwatch had. You know, you weren't restricted by necessarily the developers, it's just you had ways to customise yourself and express yourself for them, that made it meaningful. Yeah, I'm not sure what to add here, but that's what I think it is anyway. It's what makes them somewhat special. And it makes it important too, that matter. So yeah, don't think I have much else to talk about, do I? I don't know, but that's like what I'm thinking anyway. So yeah, every day now it seems like a lack of creativity in this Horizon Zero Dawn shooter, whatever it is. I didn't actually see what it was. I haven't actually seen the trailer, it was just a normally a video. Yeah, like the art style, I've seen it all before. Seeing the guys, seeing the characters, like, just nothing unique. You know, if I look back on that a few years' time and think, like, you know, it didn't have any memorable characters, I can't remember anything from it. That's going to be a big problem. You know, the fact I still remember 10 years later that Overwatch 1 had no hero restrictions in the competitive matching, it's just nuts. And that was the most fun aspect. There's no like hero restrictions for not matching, but hero restrictions. Do 6 Stalls versus 6 Genjis, and it's just, it was a fucking magical time. And then they made it competitive, and then it just lost its touch, and I even remember those. It's like you're trying to get farm nostalgia essentially to make a game good. That's what I think is missing. Like literally, it's like the biggest thing there. You just need to be like nostalgia farming in that sense to get it to a place where people can be happy, can be satisfied as well. Anyway, I think that's it really. Yeah, nobody's going to remember Horizon, nobody's going to remember High God, so there you go. Doesn't matter how much you enjoy something, it's just going to die if it's not memorable. So yeah, like people will remember other games, but yeah, that's it. move on. Alright, so this is something I feel like talking about because it's fucking annoying. I hate it. I want it gone. And it still fucking annoys me. So I'm talking about basically what I call shoehornism, because I don't actually know if there's a term for it, but it's when stupid corporations just add stupid shit to things that don't need it. And it really pisses me off. You know, I'm thinking of like how software changes over time, and then there's like this enshitification of it. That's probably the correct term, actually. But it goes a bit further than that, I think, and it's really worrying because this thing happened to me today, which I was hoping would have been gone by now, but apparently not. Basically, as I do, I have YouTube up with a sort of jazz playlist to fall asleep to, and I'm usually fine with it as long as it's like a 6 or 10 hour video, and that's usually like the minimum for me anyway. It doesn't really need to be longer than that, and it's generally good, it's fine like that. However, YouTube for some reason, even though it's not actually labelled, is forcing it into a mix playlist. Why? I'm genuinely curious why. This doesn't make any fucking sense. Because I didn't ask for this. I didn't consent to it. So you're already breaking your own fucking terms of service. I'm pretty sure of that anyway. So there is a reason here to even like sue, for example. But the thing is, nobody wants a mixed playlist. I don't even know anyone who's ever fucking praised the thing to begin with. It might have been cool back in the day when YouTube was starting out, but now it's like, I was just going to recommend me the shit that I already know. And that doesn't seem to be the case, unfortunately. It just seems like this enshitification of everything is just, it's absolutely ruining the platform. And it's not in a good way. Like, yeah, I just do not want to see this crap. Why can't you just go away with this? It seriously does not make any sense. I just do not understand the logic here. It just does not add up in the slightest. I look at this, I'm thinking, oh, there's a new feature, but it doesn't mean it's good. A new feature has to be judged by its audience, its user base. Not by the fucking company who will say, oh, it's great. We know it's great because we fucking made it. But you don't even know that. It's like when Microsoft pretty much enshitified Windows using Copilot, and Copilot started using resources that could have been used for something else, especially on low performing PCs, which are a thing still. You know, even mine is considered low performance by today's standards. And it shouldn't be, because I only got it like 4 years ago now, maybe 5. And that's the problem. When all this enshitification comes up, it just ends up backfiring. It causes way too many problems that it's worth. It just feels like another very unnecessary aspect of the platform. And again, I don't see anyone saying it's good. That's a big point, and I have to keep bringing up. Because there's literally no one saying it. No one. And whenever I look up this how to remove YouTube mix from both search and even just the fact that I'm clicking on a playlist or a video rather, it's like 6 hours long, and it's forcing it on there, nothing comes up. In fact, you get some clickbaity videos where they don't actually show you a solution. In fact, it doesn't exist. At least on mobile, it doesn't exist anyway. Like if I go onto YouTube now, and let's see if I go onto a video like that. So let's see, chance. For some reason, it's not recommending me it. That's weird. There's a new Most critical video, so I'll get that on there. There we go. Bossa Nova playlist 7 hours. Will they put it in a playlist on desktop? No. So you can't even like replicate it, that's the problem. Because when you make each platform different, it becomes an issue. And I'm not sure that I could have sworn that I maybe removed mixes from this desktop version. I don't know how, but it'd be so good to have that on normal, and this is probably why I'm going to change to a web. Oh, there's a mix, okay. So let's click on that. Oh, it's a mix. Oh, whoops. Does it allow me to remove it? Well, there's no three dots like the tutorial. There's just an X button, and the X button doesn't do anything. The other dots do not do anything. The other dots on this video does not do anything. There's nothing. So it's like you're forced into it, which is fucking stupid. Nobody wants that. People hate being forced into things, and I think this is the worst thing about what's happened to software and the internet in general now. Literally, nobody wants this. There's a good reason why. Like, come the fuck on. Smell the coffee. Like, nobody wants to be forced into it. Microsoft Copilot, nobody wanted that. Like, most AI things, nobody wanted it. You didn't see anyone asking for it. Like, oh, I want a new AI. Nobody wanted it. And this is why investors keep fucking failing as well. Because you're too stupid to realise that people don't always want things that are new. In fact, it's inaccessible to some people as well. It's like you make things inaccessible on purpose. By the looks of it anyway. It's just like, yeah, you make the world a worse place for it. Like, thanks, arseholes. Really helpful. Yeah, I'm not really sure what else to add here really, but it's just another rant. I just can't stand this shit, honestly. You know, when it comes to it as well, the more complicated you make things with this enshitification, because it does complicate things, by the way, the worse it gets for other people. You know, I consistently see that people from older generations are skeptical and unsure about how to use their devices. And this doesn't help. In fact, it makes it worse. Because guess what? People are not aware of how to use these things, and because there's something new there, like I can say that, like AI mixes, they're just going to get confused. Because that's what happens. You add too many things, you try to make it feature rich, and then you fuck everyone over because it's too feature rich. And all you need in the end is like a feature that helps the majority rather than the fucking minority, even though technically there's not really many minorities on these platforms. And you know, even then, it's like some people want a way to, for example, change the theme. There's nothing wrong with that. I think people should be able to change the theme. For some stupid reason, people just, yeah, they're just shitty. Hang on, trying to concentrate here. Yeah, so there are reasons to add things, but there's no reason to force things. This is the difference. When you can toggle it on and off, it's not really a problem, and it stays that way, by the way. But when you're forcing it, it just feels like shitty. And the analogy I thought of this actually sort of came from a channel I don't ever watch, but yeah, I think that's the way things go now, unfortunately, because fucking everyone is just greedy or scumbags or something. There's always something wrong with content creators these days, I don't know why. It just always seems to be something. There's no exception really, that realisation, but it's like having a dirty dick essentially, and I prefer that analogy because dicks are nice. I can't complain, it's not really an SFW thing, but it's a personal opinion, I guess, but that's what I mean. It's like when you get something nice, it's nice. You know, it's not enshitification. For example, a feature that allows you to customize the theme on YouTube would be great. To make it not dark theme, or even just customize the buttons and the colours of things. And even just like customize your channel a bit more. There's no problem with that. But when you're forcing things, when you force an AI, which I no doubt will do at some point, through that system, it's like, it gets real garbage, and nobody wants it anymore. It's just shit. And that's what people don't like. It's like dirty dick. Got a clean dick, dirty dick. And those are the differences. Obviously everyone wants the clean one in the end. I was trying to figure out another analogy, but it's not coming to me. Yeah, that's sort of the gist of it though. That's why I think things are just going to shit here. That's why things are just not working the way that it should. And yeah, so I think I ought to move on. I've got stuff to do. So thanks for listening. Let's go to the next topic. So I won't talk about this because I didn't really expect to, but it happened on the first day I just did fake farming and the Final Fantasy 14 obviously. But I was so confused about what I witnessed because there were a few things that didn't make sense, and I'll have to explain them. If you assuming I haven't made a topic of this already on one. No, I don't think I have, unless it was on the last episode. Don't go right, so okay. It's really fucking strange. So yeah, I started doing it. I did a sculpture. I can't remember how you pronounce it. I tried to get shared fate rank 4. I did get that in one day somehow. It's a fucking miracle, to be honest, because it's quite difficult to do. And I encountered some weird things happening in that. And one of the weirdest things I think that happened in that, there are two things, but the weirdest I'll go into last. First one is that players don't seem to understand what they're doing. It's very strange. I could get AFKing a bit on this. I certainly do it myself now, but I don't do it in a way that I'm not supporting the team. In fact, if I play healer, I'll bring up all the healer for times and stuff, and use them off cooldown and stuff to help the team, and also pull, because if I'm playing Astrolution I can grab every enemy in one wave, and that helps. But some players just don't seem to play it properly. But sometimes the maiden is ignored and does get killed, luckily, because some people notice. There's weird behaviour with also moving two fates. I noticed that sometimes there's no coordination, or sometimes they just split up for some reason and go to a completely different one, or one that's not got like a long timer rather than a one of those that you just talk to an NPC and summon it. It's very bizarre. I've seen a lot of strange behaviours like that in just the past 2 days I've been doing this. But it does get a bit weirder because there is something else that happened. When I was doing it in HYPERSKY, I can't remember how you pronounce it again, I was encountering something weird with another player on that area. And this is in Phoenix, my data center, home data center. And I noticed there was a player there, a tank, a warrior, who had no chocobo. He was constantly throwing Tomahawk, not moving from this spot, and just moving to fates that were non-interactable. So yeah, there was something weird about that. And I immediately thought, this doesn't seem like normal player behaviour. I can see maybe you can make a macro to spam Tomahawk, but I don't know how you can actually like do this really. It makes no sense. Because you're relying on someone else to do the fates, and I immediately thought the worst of them, thinking that this could be a big problem. It could be just a player who's just exploiting other people's kindness or something. And I don't know, there was something off about it. And I sort of took a break, and then I came back later to find the player was still there. And it's the same scenario. Just throwing a tomahawk, not moving, not even turning to face another enemy. And yeah, I was just confused by that. It didn't make any fucking sense, so I asked around on Reddit because it was also going in one direction as well. I should have probably followed it to make sure, but it was only going to those fates that had combat rather than the ones that had collectibles or interactions, which you can still do combat in technically. But people don't realise that it's much easier to just grab all the enemies as a group and then just hand in. It's so fucking weird. So I asked on the subreddit, like, is this a bot? Because that is the only explanation for this. You know, the lifelessness, the non-interaction of anyone, of anything, and also just ignoring fates that were quite obviously there. And then going to other ones, clearing it up, taking down the percentage as well. You could see it going off on the map, and very slowly at that matter, for that matter. And it's just so bizarre. I've never seen anything like it. In Modern Warcraft we had like, I forgot what it's called actually, what, multi-boxes, and that's it. You still have that here, but I think it's like a bit more lenient because people use it for like bard stuff. You know, the bard bands music. But I don't really see it in terms of like gathering or crafting. I don't really see it in terms of farming either. And so it's very bizarre to me. Like, what's going on there exactly? So I decided to ask on the subreddit, which probably isn't the best place, and the first two replies I got was stupid. Like, they just completely ignored the fucking question. So, one wrote the ranged attack generates a lot of enmity and one target, and fate participation is rewarded based on enmity. So I think someone, no, I didn't remove a comment, anyway, back to that comment, so it's a way to either ensure they get the rewards for a fate die fast, or to quickly get the rewards and move on to the next. And it makes sense from a perspective, I will say, myself, that someone farming it would do this, but the behaviour I saw didn't seem like that. Yeah, it wasn't like they were rushing to the target, they were already there. You know, it was like 15 minutes on a fate, and you know, they get there within like a minute or two, and the percentage would go up so fucking slowly. So it's like really suspicious. Like just throwing tomahawk, they didn't care that the timer was going down. Again, I should have probably observed that. It's just so strange. And then I got another comment saying, at least with early Shadowbringers, no idea what the enmity numbers were updated since then. Tomahawk gives X7 enmity and tank stats gives it 10 times. That means that for one Tomahawk under stance, you're generating roughly the same amount of aggro and thus credit as a regular DPS class using it 2550 potency worth damage skills. Yeah, so again, it didn't answer the question. It's like you're answering me about whether I know about tank enmity, and I do. I didn't know the numbers, admittedly, but I know that Tomahawk increases enmity, because it was a war doing that as Tomahawk. And also there's other ranged attacks. Yeah, like, it didn't answer the question. I didn't understand the behaviour. Like, what was my question anyway? Let me reread it. I started fake farming and dog trail, and I noticed I sometimes came across attacks that just spam their ranged attack and ignore certain fates. Are they botting it, or is this just a strange behaviour I'm unaware of? Like, they ignored the part about ignoring fates, and this is a weird thing. why would you ignore fate? It doesn't make sense because they come only like every few minutes, possibly like 3 to 5 minutes, I'd say. And because of that, it makes it sort of rare. It makes each space worth doing in the end. So the fact that there are bots ignoring it is also suspicious as well. Like, why are they ignoring it? It doesn't make much sense. Anyway, they suppose like auto attack does stuff, so maybe that's why they tomahawk instead. That's another thing I just realised. Like, it doesn't speed it up, but it gets the enemies to them quicker. But then I woke up this morning and found another reply. And someone said like, know your suspicions of it being a bot is probably on the mark. That is in the reply I think I made. Read the reply. There's also solo player, nobody else there, literally. So I seem to have been correct in that, which is interesting, because my first encounter with one. So not seen similar behaviours, but I've seen botting before in many different scenarios. What the fuck is that on my driveway? That's so fucking hell. So the rest of the comment says that behaviour usually makes sense for someone wanting to quickly get gold on fates and rely on others to do the fate for them, but specifically avoiding certain fates, this behaviour makes sense on the boss encounters after, and persisting on spam ranged attacks despite no one cleaning up the fate for them, because of bot behaviour. Yeah, literally. It's just what it seemed like. So yeah, I think I did encounter a bot. Which is very bizarre. I thought Final Fantasy XIV of all things would have been a little more sort of unforgiving of bots and stuff, but they do exist anyway, just from, the old spam in the city stuff. Sounds like a fucking movie, spam in the city. Still a problem. But then it just makes me wonder, why aren't you just addressing the problem to begin with for Square Enix? Why does botting exist? It's because you've done stupid shit to the game that enables it. Again, the reason why guild farming exists is because you have this stupid market board crap. And I get the market board in terms of selling, like, I don't know, materials, but I don't get it in terms of selling mounts necessarily. And there might be good reasons for that, to have mounts sold there. But this is why people end up going to buy Gil. And I'm not gonna lie, I've thought about it a lot of times. Because I've been thinking like, oh, these mounts are just so grindy and they're so expensive that I just don't know if I have the time to do it. And it has been tempting to just go into real money trading just to get the fucking Gil. To see, one, if it works as well, and two, just to get them out at the end of the fucking day. And this is the problem, you create a scarcity where it enables botting behaviour and it just ruins the fucking game for everyone else. This is why we said you can't have nice things. It's like you invented a problem for others to essentially solve. It's not hard to figure out how to fix that. Just stop making it grindy. Simple. Lower the bicolour gemstone mounts to like 100, and also just reduce everything by x5, like divide it by 5 I guess. And then you've solved the problem. You've made it less grindy. You've made it still worthwhile doing, because there'll be still people grinding that. And it's not bullshit. 100 gemstones, not bad. Gemstone vouchers. I could do that easily. But when it comes to the mount being 500, it just doesn't make sense. As with a lot of things in the game. Things are like 99 stacks or something, like the totems usually. For some reason, developers who just can't reduce it. I don't understand the logic. So you don't encourage players to actually explore fates or even support each other. Instead, you create a problem again for them to solve. And then you create the botting situation where people will essentially take advantage of that, will monopolise on it as well. Let's be honest, that's probably what's happening. And then they'll create these scenarios. It won't surprise me at some point if we start to see like a botting behaviour where, in fact, like, because I don't know if I'm lucky or unlucky to see a solo botting player, but there may even just be multiple. There might be multiple stacking in one place and then spamming, throwing. So that could be a scenario that happens. But it just sucks that, again, this is a problem, and I keep bringing this up because it is important, but this is why there's a problem to begin with. You've created it, you've made an artificial problem, and that requires an artificial solution, hence botting, hence probably AI as well. You're probably going to see more of that as time moves on. Yeah, the game gets updated. Yeah, I'm not really sure what else to add, but it is a worrying scenario. Just goes without saying. Yeah, that's another fate farming experience. The botting I've witnessed. Anyway, let's move on. I don't really like doing these, but kind of needs to be said about this type of topic. There's a weird blank new tab thing on my screen for some reason. I don't know what that's about. Weird. Don't know why Mozilla did that, but sure. But I wanted to talk about a topic that came up in the Triforce podcast, which I wasn't going to at first, but then I thought, you know what, I think it has to be said about the multiple things that have been said here. So it was in the Triforce mailbag, and they were addressing a topic from someone where someone who is like a staunch carnivore decided to go into a vegan cooking class just to sleep with the women there for some stupid reason. And, you know, it was asking about the moral ambiguity of it, I guess, the term. I can't remember if that's the correct term or not. But, you know, it reeks of objectification off the get-go. The fact that this person was going in there just for sex, it seems, rather than to actually make friends or open his mind to the idea of vegan cooking. And apparently he succeeded, which again is sort of bad news, and also why the fuck are people doing this? And why are we just having sex with people who go into your class for one session and ask for it? It just doesn't make any fucking sense. This is the problem. It's not about exactly the choices you make. Of course, it's up to you if you want that. Whether you're the one wanting sex or even just confronting that person on it. But this contributes to the terribleness of, well, in this case, a man. How men just use women. It's fucking disgusting. That's why I think it is an objectification situation. And also, like, the wording in the email, I'm not sure if it's a typo, but the guy literally said, like, he referred to women as something rather than someone. Like, that already says a lot. So, yeah, that's extremely worrying. And even then, it's like there isn't really anything there. Like, in terms of having sex with someone, I could be wrong about this because I'm a virgin and proud of it. I don't really care. It's not really interested me. But I know from past experience that, you know, porn and sex, it isn't the same thing. They're completely different. So immediately it's like there's already this enshitification, I guess you could call it, of that being a thing, and it not reflecting the reality, because the reality is very fucking different. It's just very worrying from that outset as well. But the other thing is that what was said in this, and I think Lewis and Sips, concluded that this wasn't a good thing to do because he wasn't transparent about not being vegan in that group. So yeah, it was already sort of worrying, and there were probably other people in that group, to be honest, who weren't vegan, but either way, I think there should have been some transparency there. As fuck, I keep saying Sips should have done. Sips did say it, and it's extremely worrying from that as well. Like, why the fuck are people just doing this? Like, lying to get their way? This is the problem. This is literally corruption. So I genuinely do not understand why people think that they should get their way all the time. It doesn't make any fucking sense. It shows how evil people are. Because yes, this is technically an act of evil. It's obvious that it is an act of evil. Because it's giving in to greed. It's probably harming people in the process as well, because I imagine how many people this person didn't tell, because the story's quite vague. And there isn't much detail, so there's no like, oh, I told them I'm not vegan. But no, that wasn't mentioned. And I have to go off that. So that sucks. But then we have to talk about the thing that came after this, which is about what the group was about. And there were questions from everyone on the podcast about whether it's actually like a diet thing, where they're just cooking for the diet's sake, or whether it was for moral reasons. And we also found out a surprising fact that Lewis browses the r/vegan subreddit, which is quite interesting because he knows about the various dating issues that people have there, and it comes up quite a lot. So I'm surprised about that, and yeah, I think I did say before that I brought up about Lewis on that Reddit as well, about how he's technically not following veganism to the T. So also let I'll let you know. But he's not vegan, he's plant-based, and there's a difference. But he seems to have changed his mind over the years to some extent, but still makes excuses. I'm not really sure what's going on there. I don't think he is vegan, unfortunately, and this is just based off what I know about it. You know, the definition says something very different. The Vegan Society, the most reliable source for the definition, by the way, not Oxford, because Oxford don't seem to have asked the Vegan Society about it or even just got permission. And instead they've just made their own thing up, and it's ended up confusing the narrative, because now we've got like people using the Oxford definition for it, and they're not using the authority. Like, I'm not saying Vegan Society is an authority in that sense, not like a police authority, but they're the people that have coined it and made it what it is. And that's why I think that definition is the correct one, not the Oxford. Yeah, about avoiding animal exploitation wherever possible and practicable is like the most important part of that, and that's how I've summed up the definition over these years. Yeah, Lewis does not prescribe to that in the slightest. He's definitely plant-based. So I have to go into the thing after this as well, which is important, because it's about lifestyle and stuff and diet. So there's a hair in my fucking computer, I don't know what that's about. But Piran brought up something really dumb, and it's typical Piran stuff, but oh my god, this one is so disconnected, it's so cognitively dissonant, it's just insane. So, he said that this is a group about diet, and that's not exactly true. Like, people are there for different reasons, and it could be that it's neutral, but we don't have any clarification on that, and obviously this email user who was in the wrong here doing this wouldn't have asked. So there's no way of knowing, so that's immediately the first problem here. So we can't run off assumptions, and with enough that actually inspired a few lyrics that I made only like a few minutes ago. I literally wrote an entire lyrical section based on this because it reminded me of other topics as well, but operation assumption is what I called it, and it's not good. As in the topic itself just shows concerning traits, and this is exactly what I'm talking about. It's operating off assumptions, and that's the wrong way to go about it, and this is what Piran seems to do with these topics. He's just not tried to educate himself on. And which I have emailed about, by the way. I did it quite a while ago. I talked about how Piran said was wrong, and also how Lewis was not vegan. I didn't say it in a condescending way, and that she said I'm actually a big fan of the podcast, and I still am despite this. But it did seem like Piran is being very disingenuous, and it's the same here. I think disingenuous is the term. But for someone who's not like purposely looking at the research and even just details. So yeah, Piran basically said that there's no moral weight to diet, and this is just straight up fucking false. Like, Jesus Christ, it doesn't even take a second to realise how wrong this is, because you'll find the flaw immediately. If you know, you know. And of course the flaw is if it's not morally wrong, then why the fuck are people like criticising cannibals? Why are they criticising people who eat dogs? It just comes back around to this, where why are we deciding who we can and can't eat if there isn't a moral problem? And also there is. So that says a lot. And it doesn't really need to be said anything else, but that's what I think. Literally, no way, what the fuck is that in the door? I hope it's just someone delivering something. Yeah, I think it is actually. Yeah, it's just so bizarre to me how everyone just keeps running off this assumption that someone being vegan is done for dietary reasons rather than lifestyle or moral choice. And when you actually think about it, it literally is because of moral choice. Even the dietary aspect can be seen as a moral choice in itself. And I commented this on the podcast too. Literally said veganism, or not veganism, actually just the vegan diet or lifestyle is based on the choice to not exploit animals and to help the environment and to help human health. It addresses multiple different aspects of the world, and it does have a moral weight to it. And also brought up how I'm not vegan, well, I just don't identify as it. This way I can be more effective. And yeah, it's just annoying. Get distracted again. Don't know what the fuck is going on in this place sometimes. So yeah, like there is more weight to these choices. The lifestyle, the diet, anything. To say there isn't is just being ignorant. There's even a moral weight to, for example, shopping off Amazon, or even just shopping for a video card or computer. There is a choice there, and doing what we can with the best of our abilities and our experience and knowledge is what's important there. Because you can't avoid things 100% of the time, but you can definitely try. And that's what I operate under, even though I don't identify as vegan. And I've looked into alternatives for smartphones where I can essentially fit the criteria of something not coming from China and having a low carbon footprint, of just being ethical in general, being repair friendly. I'm only search solution from that is that literally Fairphone, but I'm still waiting for a decent Fairphone product to come out before I even get that. You know, I do need a new phone to an extent because I think my phone is dying. Literally, that's all I can do. I can either wait for a phone, or the Fairphone rather, or wait until this phone dies and then get the smartphone that I originally decided to get, which is a better model than this one, honestly. It has more going on, and yeah, that's all I can do in that situation. And there's not really many ways to address the other problem there, which people consistently bring up. It's like, well, you're buying something made from child labour, you're buying something made for like nothing essentially in China. And my response to that is always the same, like, why aren't you? Like, you simply just expose yourself. You know, I'm doing what I can, and then you're just exposing yourself by bringing this up. Like, you're trying to bring up an argument for the sake of arguing, rather than like a bad faith argument, I'd say. Not arguing. Arguing itself is fine, but bad faith is just bad. And that's what it is. You're just trying to find excuses, and this is a problem I consistently see when it comes to making a lifestyle choice or even like a purchase decision. It very often comes down to someone making excuses as to why they can't do something. I've already sort of been through this myself. I've had to let go of biases and make the more ethical choice. You know, one of the other things I do now is that I try to find ways to support smaller businesses or people, for that matter. And yeah, it has benefits. You know, I literally buy all my clothes from a place called Vegan Outfitters. Not all of it actually, technically, it's just like the shirts and the hoodies, because that's the only place I can find that. But I can't really find many good quality chinos or socks, for that matter, or even boxers. Like, boxers are still an issue. Like, sometimes it's really shit, like there's this bamboo one on Amazon which is just garbage. It is so bad, it shrinks and it breaks. You know, mine only lasted like a year or two. I was like wearing them like once every week or so, possibly. Each pair anyway. It's so badly designed, and we need to incentivise the better things there. Like, if there's a good quality pair of boxers, like, yeah. You know, even though there's maybe a slightly morally questionable thing, there we go, said it right. That's still worth doing because that's the best I can do. You know, I don't want to be buying boxes every fucking year. You know, I want these to last. And that's all I need. It's also because of the size, that's the problem. Like, I got 2XL and they shrunk, and then it stopped functioning properly because they kept breaking. Like, what the fuck? And then I've even got like a new pair of pyjama shorts because mine, the thingy, the waistband came out. Snapped actually, because it was so fucking tight around my ankles when I was going to the toilet that I actually snapped it. Like, that's how bad these products are. So I had to get a new pair, and this pair, even though it's elasticated and stuff, is snapping. And it's only like 2 months into having it. Like, I don't even fucking know anymore. It's like the people wearing these don't actually test them or don't even use them for that matter. It's like they buy it, wash it, wear it once, leave it. That sucks. And like, even some vegan outfitter things, honestly, some of them are durable, but others are not. I've had this pink shirt for over 2 years and it's lasted. Mainly it's got stains on bits of it. It's probably 3 years now that I think about it. Yeah, that's enough on that topic. It's just interesting. It's more weight of stuff. Yeah, let's move on. So, I just had the most confusing movie watching experience of my life. And yikes, I didn't even realise at first what I was watching, but it turns out it was the wrong movie. But I'll talk about it anyway. Because it's annoying that when movies have such similar names with a one-letter difference. That's the thing, they're the same fucking name, one-letter difference. Like, it's just batshit insane. Stupid movie names, like, what the fuck? But as for this movie I watched, it was actually something I found on LGBT, and the name is easy to confuse as well. It's called Badhaai, except I watched the version that ends in ho. And yeah, I was very fucking confused. I couldn't really see many things going on here that indicated it was LGBTQ+, so I was very confused by that. There's nothing there. And even then, I saw a part in this where G2 was looking at a guy and I was thinking, is he bi-curious? I was so fucking confused. But let's talk about Badhaai, because I just finished this, and gratefully I did. Yeah, comedy romance is not my sort of thing, especially with drama as well. It's drama as well. But I wasn't very keen on this movie overall. My impressions of it certainly changed over time, and you know, it started from okay, this has promise to okay, maybe not, and then it suddenly picked up again. It just goes through the motions, and I just wasn't massively impressed with it. But there are moments in it which kind of works. Like, there are definitely funny moments. There's some interesting bits. There's a lot of fucking watermarks and stuff at the beginning. I was very surprised by that. I caught off guard because it's all in Hindi, but English subbed, and because I couldn't find this other movie, I was thinking. It didn't seem right because the date was 2018 on this. I thought, I swear I read about this 3 years ago, so yeah, something didn't add up there, and I suppose this means I need to do my research a lot better now, to be honest. Yeah, it definitely confused me, I have to admit. It was very bizarre. But yeah, the movie basically revolves around like a romance plot between Nakul and this other girl called Renee? I'll say Renee. So I got that wrong, my bad. But yeah, it's between Renee and stuff, and that's sort of where it sort of starts. So it's also bits of this, I think. But there's also the grandmother, who is quite interesting. They all sort of seem to live together by the looks of it, which is interesting. And then what was the other thing? Yeah, obviously like G2 and she spelled Jetu and Balby. Is that her mother's name? Could have gotten that wrong. Oh look, I can't find it. I can't find it. Find the name, damn it. Yeah, Babbly, that's okay. That's it. I can't remember what the little brother is called, but yeah. But there's a plot going on with them. Believe it or not, the brother has a bit of a story too, and also I forgot the names again. G2 and Babbly. There we go. And yeah, there's some interesting moments with that, I think. I think it was kind of an interesting movie in some sense as well, because it's about, it's quite progressive in that way. I wouldn't say it's like bigoted or anything, but just sort of half expect to an extent, because I don't know, it seems like the sort of genre, the movie that it could have that. Yeah, that is interesting. Now, I don't really want to go through the entire story, but I think if you're into like romance and drama, it might be something that you like. I wouldn't say it's funny exactly. I think the grandmother was like the comedic effect, and Nicole at times was probably the comedic effect as well. So that they added an interesting aspect to it. Having said that, so oh yeah, the plot. As it progresses, you find out that D2 and Babbly, the mother and father of Nicole and his brother Ramo. I could have gotten that wrong again, sorry. I butchered his names, fucking hell. They were interesting. But they decided to have another baby at the age of, I think, 40 years old, which is kind of insane. But the story basically revolves around that, which is interesting. And there's also some interesting moments with, I think, Nicole not getting a proper sex education. So he's like, somebody thinking he had a condom somewhere, and he decided to discard it in the toilet. That's another thing I forgot to say. I commend this movie's lack of sexual humour. I find there's too many comedies that do that, and even ones that are non-romance related. I haven't seen many romances. I'm not really into that. In fact, it's fucking boring. There's always a straight couple, and this is no different, unfortunately, but at least it doesn't have the sexual humour. So again, it has that going for it. And there is a funny moment with the grandmother sort of saying something. I think it's like she's referring to something, well, as sexy. It's just the wrong terminology. And someone corrects her on it, which isn't helping the situation at all. Just some silly stuff. Yeah, and basically it revolves around Nicole, and I think the little brother was a bit unsure about this new baby sister that they're going to have, which is interesting. I think that was probably the most interesting aspect of the movie, in my opinion. And there was also some interesting bits with Renee and Nicole, who had some issues because of, well, realising that their parents are a bit odd in that sense. They decided to have a baby without confronting anyone. And there's also a discussion at the beginning, I forgot about this, about having an abortion, which I thought was really interesting. That's why I say it's kind of progressive. Yeah, certainly a conversation that should be had in that case. But yeah, the mother, Babbly, wanted to have the baby in the end. So yeah, that happened again. It was so weird that I'm watching this, but it just didn't click that this could be the wrong movie because I don't speak Hindi. I wish I did speak other languages, but it's so hard to fucking learn, especially in my current state. Something I might be able to learn at one point. Yeah, there are places that can help. I think Duolingo is pretty decent from what I've heard. So that could be a way to read and write it. I mainly wanted to learn Japanese at first, but I'm not sure if I do now. I think I want to learn something related to a country that's probably going to be safe in the future, let's be honest. So rather not Japan, probably somewhere else. Yeah. But anyway, Nicole and Ronald eventually come to terms with the fact that there's a baby sister on the way. Well, they don't even know actually there's a baby sister. I forgot about that. It's only revealed at the end. She's really fucking cute. There was a great bit at the end after this like brief credit bit. You can see the baby walking around. Yeah, very adorable. So yeah, like just them come to terms with it, and Nicole has some badass moments where he confronts his brother's bullies because they hear about the baby that his parents are having, or their parents rather. So that was a pretty cool moment. Yeah, like, there isn't much else to say about this movie. It's just okay. I'd say it's not done anything what I'd consider particularly special. I think it's addressed a pretty sensitive and somewhat realistic topic. Yeah, there probably are families out there where people have to confront that, where they are essentially like 19 years old, like Nicole is. I think he's 19 anyway. That's what I thought he said. And then obviously having to confront the fact that you're going to have a baby sister who's like 0 years old. Like, holy shit, how do you even address that? That's not easy to address. So yeah, it's only an interesting aspect, and it does sort of hit home a bit, hit close to home. I was about 9 years old when I think my dad decided to have other siblings, I mean other babies, but you know, me having other siblings was a bit unusual because I only had one other sibling before this. And suddenly there's another one, and then another after that, and then another after that. So it's like a 2 year difference between each, and so the youngest, as of now, is about 14, which is kind of fucking crazy. So yeah, I'm 28, I'm twice her age. Next year, not so much of a gap there, is there? No. Yeah, certainly makes you think as well. Also, like, what are people really thinking when they decide this as well? Because it seemed like almost an accident to an extent. That's the only bad part of this movie, because it's like GT was romancing badly in bed, not like sexualizing. That's again the thing that I respect about this massively. But it's like it's being romantic and reading off something, and yeah, like that's basically how it started. It's all started how my life got turned upside down, and then back up. Yeah, again, it's a decent movie. I don't know really who it appeals to, because I'm not the person that it appeals to. But again, there are some interesting points, and I think if you're like extremely bored, you might find this interesting. So yeah, go for it if you want to, but yeah, don't complain to me if you didn't like it. And again, this is not my forte. I'm more an action adventure guy. So that said, I've got to journey on to the next topic. Right, I'm going to call it on this podcast episode, because it's been some time going by for some reason. Can't quite explain it. I need to move on. So thanks for listening. See you on another time.